right, everybody, welcome to another edition of Saints Happy Hour podcast. We're on the YouTubes. So if you find us, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, share to all your friends and family. Go to saintshappyhour.com and become a patron. You get access to everything we do. You get access to our Discord, access to every podcast we do, commercial free, no commercials. You don't have to worry about it. And you get all sorts of other things, like every piece of content we do, you get access to. Go to saintshappyhour.com, sign up, support the show, support the Saints podcast that wins awards. You should do it. All right, Kevin, you're our draft aficionado, our draft expert, and I tasked you with something. I said, Kevin, I know you're doing these mocks. And the cool thing about the PFF simulator and other mock draft simulators is they sort of AI, it sort of evolves, right? Like as the player rankings change, the mock drafts change. And I said to Kevin, I said, find me what players, as you're doing these mocks, are you noticing that you were like, oh, I used to be able to get him at 40 and he was always there at 40. And now I'm picking at 29 and he's gone sometimes, or he's not there at 40 and he's getting picked sooner. Or I was picking a guy at 71 and now he's getting picked in the mid 50s. I said, Kevin, give me guys that are rising on the draft board, because I think that's an interesting exercise, because you can say these guys are rising. Does that mean the Saints have to pick them early? Does that mean it's a guy that, hey, we thought that's a guy you could get at 40, not so much anymore. That's a guy you could get at 71. Nope, you better grab that guy at 40 now, because he's rising up the chart. So when you do these mock drafts, who's guys? Let's start with offense. Who's guys on offense? Because that's something the Saints they want some stuff, but who's guys on offense where you're like, man, that guy, he's the last couple of weeks, he's just going up and up the boards.
So I ran through all 7 rounds, and I've done hundreds of these things.
Hundreds. He's not.
And I started doing them in January.
Mm-hmm.
Now, January mock drafts are different from February mock drafts,
mm-hmm.
and the February mock drafts are different from mid-March to now, mm-hmm. because you've had Senior Bowl, you've had the combine, and you've had team workouts and things like that.
Pro days.
So there are guys that I saw in January and February in certain spots that are now way higher. Like, for instance, Tyjae Spears of Tulane, he was going like in the 130s or something a couple of months ago, but now he's going as high as like 70. He's anywhere from like 70 to 100. He's jumped he's jumped a lot.
Yeah.
But again, that's your strange January, February to, post Senior Bowl and like workouts and things.
Yeah.
That's like that. I tried to focus on where were these guys in March? Like, where were they March 11th? We're recording this on the 13th. I know you hate giving away when you record
dates.
These.
We like to pretend
we're recording this on
right.
April 13th. I looked back at March 11th on all these guys to see where they were getting projected or where they were going. And it is kind of surprising. There were even some guys that I went back even further just to see how much of a rise they'd been on.
Yeah.
So, the first, you said offense.
That's right.
The biggest name, the biggest shock, is Chandler Zavala, the guard from North Carolina State. His current average draft position, and this is the amalgamation
mm-hmm.
of all the draft mutants like myself when we're doing the drafts, and it calculates, where'd he go, and it just puts them all together. I don't know what their cutoff time is. I don't know how they arrive at that number, but I know mm-hmm. it is a large collection of data that they're averaging together. So his current average draft position right now is 108.8. It was way lower.
Wow, yeah.
Like, he was getting, his average draft position was in the 170s.
Ooh, okay. So it's like 2 rounds, basically.
2 full rounds. And his rank, PFF now has him ranked overall pick 70.
Ooh, see, yeah, that's interesting. And
So that's a huge jump.
That's a huge jump, and I think it's key to remember, people, is that not only does the pro days and the workouts and that sort of thing change, and as the coaches get involved, they start saying, "Oh, this player I have a vision for this player. He can work." But what happens too is all these scouts and all these teams, these personnel people, they start being a little more honest when they're leaking to the media, because they want to be on record as saying, "Oh, that guy Kevin, that offensive that running back or whatever, I loved him." And they start being a little bit, the truth starts, it doesn't come out fully, right? Because teams still lie and all that. But it starts to, as we get closer to the draft, the team's true feelings and the team's true opinions of these players start to leak out. And that's why I think that's interesting. That's a guy that if he's at 70 rated now, that's a guy that he could sneak into that second round, right? He could sneak into like pick 63, 60, maybe 58 to 64, right? Yeah. And that's a guy 2 months ago you'd be like, what? No,
so
he's not going
average draft
round.
Position now, 108.8. 1 month ago, March 11th, and I'm having to go March 11th because that's when PFF they track it every week at a certain day, and I don't remember what day March 11th was. But on March 11th, he was getting average draft position of 167 at the 50th percentile. They rated him. They rated an average of like the 25th, the 50th, and I think the 75th percentile. So I picked the middle one to get a more level number.
And I asked you about risers, and I wanted to start on offense because I have a theory, and you can just blow it out the water if you think it's incorrect, if the data proves incorrect. But you've been saying, as we've been doing these mock drafts, and you've been running them, and you've been doing them since January, like you said, you've been saying all along, this wide receiver class, it kind of sucks. Like it doesn't. Not only does it not fit what the Saints need, a big body receiver, like overall, it's just not that good. And other draft analysts and teams, they got good players, and you can find good players everywhere. It's not that bad. And I'm just wondering, are you seeing that where not too many receivers are rising up the boards, and it's kind of your thoughts and the general thought of this wide receiver class kind of blows? Are you seeing that with like no receivers are kind of bubbling up, rising up the boards as we go?
So let me say that there are two wide receivers on here and arguably three, but two wide receivers are worth taking in the first round. That's Quentin Johnson and Jackson Smith. Jackson Smith Njigba, and I am hopefully I'm not mangling his name too bad, but those two guys, they look like wide receivers. They've got the height and the weight, and they've got the numbers to back that up. These other guys are all under 6 feet. You got Jordan Addison from USC, who's 5'11", but he's a buck 73.
Ooh.
And, so you got problems there. And then these other guys are just like 5'9", 5'9", 5'8". It's like you got to get to Michael Wilson from Stanford before you start getting back to wide receiver height. And even then, you then have to weigh it by, these guys weren't exactly, blow away, like nothing. Like your Michael Wilsons, your Rishi Rices, A.T. Perry, who I've taken a lot in my mocks. It's like, do they leap off the page and say, this is a guy that can be my top guy? And I'm sometimes a vibes guy, and I don't get the vibe.
You don't get the vibe of that.
I'm not Juge. I'm not eating tape for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I'm just not. So I'm going by numbers that I see on a page, charts and graphs and vibes. That's it.
Yeah, but I mean, you the thing is like wide receivers that you draft an exception high. You then you have a team of like guys that are too small, too slow, not big, So yeah. It does say to me that the wide receiver class, who's a guy on offense, where you look at these risers, whether offensive linemen, whoever, and you're like, man, this guy is rising and he's going to be picked high, and people are going to be like, what is going on?
I've got 3 other people on offense on my list here. 2 of them are tight ends. One of them is and one of them is a quarterback. So I've got Tucker Kraft, Zach Kuntz. Those are the 2 tight ends, and it's either Kuntz or Kuntz, however, whatever. So Tucker Kraft, he was going average draft position at 103 on February 11th. By March 11th, he had jumped up to 81st was his average draft position. He's currently at 78.9, and he's now ranked 79th.
Okay.
So he's pretty much like now in line with like where PFF thinks he is and where the draft mutants think he is. But he's shot up.
Yeah.
And he's a FSC guy or FCS guy.
Yeah.
And it's like, wait, where did he come from? Like, I didn't really notice him. And then all of a sudden, like, he's showing up as being one of those guys that, like, he's one of the top 6 or 7 wide tight ends that'll go in this draft.
I feel like if the Saints don't get a tight end at 29 or 40, and we've talked about it on other podcasts where we feel like they need one, I feel like at 71, they might be sitting there being like, man, it's been picked over. And like 5 of them have gone in the top 70. And what happened? And
if they want a tight end and they're at 71 and Tucker Kraft is there, unless you see some knockout player, I would say go with Kraft.
And because you're not getting them at your next pick. At what do they pick?
Oh,
at?
no.
At
no,
115,
no.
You're not getting them.
No. So the other one, Zach Kuntz, on February 25th, his average draft position was 236.
Ooh.
By March 11th, so 2 weeks later, average draft position had jumped up to 166.
Whoo.
And let me make sure let me make sure I've got that correct. I want to make sure I'm saying average draft position and not rank. Hang on, come on, click.
Yeah.
So it is average draft position. So average draft position on March 11th was 166. Today, his average draft position is now 127.3.
Whew, that's he's moved up like 3 rounds.
Yes.
Yes.
Like he was.
Yeah.
You know, like shit. Go back to January. He was a guy that was going. I saw this guy a bunch in the 7th round. With the Saints had 2 picks. I was taking him with one of my 7th round picks.
Yeah.
A bunch. Like you can go back. It's in the Kevin Does Mock Drafts room. You scroll back. Zach Kuntz is going in the 7th. I'm getting him in the 7th round. Somewhere in early March, that shit changed. And it skyrocketed in March 4th.
Yeah. And
has since been on the way up.
Yeah. And the thing is,
it's dipped slightly, but where he's at now, you know, the 127.3, he's that's a top 4. That's top 4.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Look, nothing's guaranteed. They always have people that you think going to get drafted in the 3rd, 4th round, and they end up a few of them get as UDFA. So it's not perfect, but I do think this is an interesting exercise because people doing these mocks, we're watching clips, whether we're eating tape or we're listening to podcasts, and people are telling us, hey, teams like this guy, he can do this, he can do that. So these movements don't happen just for no reason, and that's why it's interesting. So now I want to get to.
Hang on.
Go ahead.
Let me throw a curveball.
Okay, here we go.
Quarterback.
Okay, this was
not a need. Not
a need, but we want him gone. We want him picked ahead.
But
we want as many picks as possible.
If you can get a guy later, we've all been pining for your Jake Hayners or maybe even your Clayton Tunes, you know, depending on where they fall. Hell, the Purdue guy has actually dropped a bunch. The Purdue guy is now going like late 6th round. But there's been a guy on the rise that I wasn't seeing before. Dorian Thompson Robinson from UCLA. I'm looking at him. 1 month ago, March 11th, average draft position 235. That's the 7th round. His current average draft position 156.2.
My God.
He has jumped nearly 80 spots. He's jumped nearly 80 spots. PFF now has him ranked at 163. Not that far behind or right around the Jake Haener line. So what he's offering, it's like, you know, somebody out there likes him.
His name sounds like the American villain in Emily in Paris. Like her new boss or something. I don't know. But that's interesting. And listen, Kevin, the more quarterbacks that go in the top 3 rounds, that's better for the Saints. We like Anthony, give me 5. Give me 6 quarterbacks going in the first 3 rounds, because that's six players that the Saints probably weren't going to take anyway. So
give me somebody reaching on Tanner McKee.
That's right. Please do that. Thanks for joining us, guys. This has been our podcast on the risers in the draft on offense. And remember to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Go to saintshappyhour.com. Subscribe to the best Saints podcast on earth, the only one that wins awards. Thanks for joining us. And until next week, the bar is closed.